Council, I have started the recording.
Right. Good evening, everyone. I am going to call the City Council meeting for Monday, June 7th, 2021 to order. And per Governor Inslee's emergency proclamation 20-05 and 20-28 and stay safe, stay healthy, the City of Auburn is holding public meetings virtually at this time. City of Auburn Resolution number 5581 designates City of Auburn meeting locations for all regular, special, and study session meetings of the City Council and of the boards, committees, and commissions of the city as virtual locations. So if council, if you will please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. And Sean, will you please call roll?
Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Here.
Councilmember Baggett.
Here.
Councilmember Brown.
Excused.
Councilmember J-Raj.
Here.
Councilmember Malinga.
Here.
Councilmember Stearns.
Here.
Councilmember Trout Manuel.
Excused. All right, council, tonight we have two proclamations. The first one is for LGBTQ plus Pride Month, and the proclamation is this. Whereas the City of Auburn is a welcoming community and recognizes the importance of equality and freedom, and whereas the month of June was designated Pride Month to honor the Stonewall riots, which is commemorating its 52nd anniversary and is generally recognized as the catalyst of the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, LGBTQ plus movement. And whereas Washington State has led the nation in protecting the civil rights of our lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer neighbors, coworkers, friends, and family members. And whereas in 2008, the City of Auburn passed resolution number 4345 that joined Auburn with the National Leagues of Cities Partnership for Working Toward Inclusive Communities, a program affirming that Auburn is committed to inclusion as a fundamental aspect of our community, and that local elected officials can and should lead the way forward in making inclusiveness a priority in our cities. And whereas the City of Auburn in 2008 also began offering domestic partner benefits to its employees, and further affirming that all employees, regardless of sexual orientation, will be treated equally in the eyes of their employers. And whereas the City of Auburn in 2017 added resolution number 5284 that reaffirms its commitment to making inclusiveness and diversity fundamental aspects of our community and affirming the value of all Auburn residents. Whereas we honor the history of the fight for equality and we celebrate and take pride in our commitment to being a community that is safe and welcoming, where all people can feel safe and live without fear and prejudice, discrimination, violence, and hatred based on their race, religion, gender identity, or sexual orientation. And now, therefore, I, Nancy Backus, Mayor of the City of Auburn, do hereby proclaim June 2021 as LGBTQ plus Pride Month in the City of Auburn, and urge all citizens to recognize the contributions made by members of the LGBTQ plus community and to actively promote the principles of equality, constitutional, and civil rights for all people. Dated the 7th day of June, 2021. And council, our second proclamation this evening is for Juneteenth, 2021. Whereas President Abraham Lincoln signed the Emancipation Proclamation on January 1, 1863, declaring the slaves in Confederate territory free, paving the way for the passing of the 13th Amendment, which formally abolished slavery in the United States of America. And whereas news of the Emancipation Proclamation was delayed some 2.5 years to June 19, 1865, in Galveston, Texas, when Union General Gordon Granger read General Order Number 3, announcing the total abolishment of slavery. And whereas June 19th has a special meaning to African Americans and is called Juneteenth, combining the words June and 19th, and has been celebrated by the African American community for over 150 years. And whereas Juneteenth is a day to recognize the contributions and achievements that African Americans have made in our city, state, and country, and commitment to working together to ensure that equal access and opportunities toward equality continue. And whereas we acknowledge African American freedom, contributions, and achievements within this community, past and present. And whereas during this Juneteenth event, we appreciate the African American experience and celebrate the inclusion of all races, ethnicities, and nationalities. And now, therefore, I, Nancy Backus, Mayor of the City of Auburn, do hereby proclaim June 19th, 2021 to be Juneteenth 2021 in the City of Auburn. And I encourage all residents to join me in this celebration, dated the 7th day of June, 2021. So Council, tonight recommitting to our Inclusive Auburn initiative, where all members of our community are welcomed and embraced. All right, moving on. We do not have any agenda modifications this evening that I am aware of.
No, Your Honor.
We have no new business. We have no public hearings this evening. We will move to audience participation. This is a place on the agenda where the public is invited to speak to the City Council on any issue. Right now, we have virtual participation, meaning, right, we have none, but I still want to read it. Participants can submit written comments via mail, fax, or email. All written comments must be received prior to 5 p.m. on the day of the scheduled meeting and must be 350 words or less. If you have public comment, please mail those comments to City of Auburn, attention Sean Campbell, City Clerk, 25 West Main Street, Auburn, Washington, 98001. You may fax comments to attention Sean Campbell, City Clerk, with the number 253-804-3116, or you may email comments to publiccomment@auburnwa.gov. And Council, we have not received any public comment for this evening's meeting. We have no correspondence this evening. We will move to Council Ad Hoc Committee reports, where the chair may report on the status of their ad hoc council committee's progress on assigned tasks and may give their recommendation to the City Council, if any. We currently have one ad hoc committee, and that is for finance. And Councilmember Baggett, as chair, do you have a report this evening?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. The Council Ad Hoc Finance Committee, consisting of Councilmember Jayaraj and myself, reviewed 56 pages of 2021 claims vouchers totaling $4.5 million dated June 7th, 2021. The committee also reviewed payroll vouchers for the period May 12th through June 1st, 2021, in the total amount of $2.7 million. All questions by the committee for the finance department were answered to the committee's satisfaction. And upon completion of our review, the committee recommends council approval of these vouchers. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Baggett. All right, we will move on to the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered by the City Council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Councilmember Jayaraj.
I'll second that, Your Honor.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. The consent agenda for this evening consists of the minutes of the May 10th, 2021, and the May 24th, 2021 study sessions, the minutes of the May 17th, 2021 regular council meeting, claims vouchers and payroll vouchers as recommended for approval by the Finance Ad Hoc Committee. And lastly, setting the date for a public hearing for our TIP, which is the 2022 to 2027 Transportation Improvement Program. And this will set the date for the public hearing.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Council, do you have any questions or comments? Hearing none, if you would please unmute. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Passes. We have no unfinished business. We will move to ordinances. Ordinance number 6816, an ordinance amending section 8.08.180 of the Auburn City Code relating to solid waste collection charges. Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to adopt ordinance number 6816.
Thank you. Councilmember Stearns.
I will second that.
Thank you. Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you. Ordinance 6816 will amend the Auburn City Code to adjust residential and commercial solid waste utility rates. The new rates will incorporate an increase to King County disposal fees, waste management collection costs, and provides more than 60 days of working capital in the city's solid waste fund by the end of 2023. These amended rates will become effective on October 1st, 2021.
Thank you. Council, do you have any questions or comments? Right, hearing none, if you would please unmute. All those in favor of ordinance number 6816, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Ordinance 6816 passes. Ordinance number 6822, an ordinance amending sections 3.40.010 and 3.41.01. They're the same. 3.40.010 and 3.41.010 of the Auburn City Code to restore an inadvertently omitted allocation of tax revenue to an established city fund. Councilmember Baggett.
Move to adopt ordinance 6822.
Thank you. Councilmember Stearns.
I will second that motion.
Thank you. Councilmember Baggett.
Ordinance 6822 will reinstate a 1% allocation from the total 10% utility tax assessed on city utilities to the arterial street preservation account that was inadvertently excluded in a prior ordinance.
Thank you. Council, any questions or comments? All right, if you would please unmute. All those in favor of ordinance number 6822, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say no. Ordinance number 6822 passes. All right, a short business agenda this evening, council. We will move to mayor and council member reports. At this time, the mayor and city council may report on significant items associated with their appointed positions on federal, state, regional, and local organizations. And we will begin with Deputy Mayor DeCoursey.
Thank you, Mayor. On May 19th, I attended the virtual King County Affordable Housing Committee meeting. We had a full packed agenda. There's one particular item I wanted to focus on this evening, and that item is the 2021 federal legislative priorities for the Affordable Housing Committee, which were adopted by the committee. We had long discussions related to the federal priorities and looking at what the needs are across the region, and with great help from Stephen Norman, Executive Director of the County Housing Authority, who's worked closely with a congressional delegation and was able to provide a lot of input for these federal legislative priorities. So the priorities for 2021 include ensuring a long-term housing recovery act. That is a sponsored bill by Representative Adam Smith, and it would allocate about $25 billion in long-term housing assistance through one-time, one-use housing choice vouchers. So it helped people who are in the potential area of a short-term eviction, and will prevent that, and also be aimed at housing some of the resolving some of the rental arrears that people are experiencing now. The one-time vouchers will be for 200,000 additional low-income households. Also looking at infrastructure funding. So we know the bill that's potentially going through Congress for infrastructure. That bill will include a housing element in it as well, and be able to provide some development funds for affordable housing, and for preservation and for recapitalization of programs as well. Also looking at expanding the low-income housing tax credit program, which is a tremendous program to help build affordable housing, and looking at a lot of different things. One is lowering the bond test from 50% down to 25%, which would allow greater number of projects to be accessible to the credits. Also looking at $45 billion for the National Housing Trust Fund. And this targets 75% of investments to projects serving extremely low-income households, earning 30% of AMI or less. And then the large piece of this is also looking at $70 billion for what's known as the Public Housing Capital Fund. That is the HUD program that pays for the modernization, redevelopment, if you will, of and upgrades for public housing. The need for public housing deferred maintenance for this type of work increases by about $3 billion annually across the country. And this is $70 billion is a good start to help try and recapture some of those lost dollars that housing authorities face overall. HUD is looking at a community development program increase. So an additional $5 billion in a home investment program and $10 billion in a competitive CDBG allocation that would be available to local governments. So a number of different things that are occurring on that level. And we hope that Congress can act on these things in a relatively short manner and get the funds into the hands of those who need it greatly. Also, I attended on June 3rd, the monthly Growth Management Policy Board meeting, virtually again. And again, another packed agenda, but an item I want to focus on there is, again, the regional housing action plan and strategy. We received a draft of the housing strategy preliminary outline, and it encompasses 3 different areas that we would look at for the need that is more than 800,000 units that we need between now and 2050. So the 3 areas are supply, which is to build more housing of different types. And this would meet the region's vision for a more livable, prosperous, and equitable future. And more housing is needed in all different types, costs, and of course, with accessible housing for jobs and transit and services. The second item is stability. So providing opportunities for residents to live in housing that meets their needs. And as the region grows and becomes a more expensive place to live, many households are at a serious threat of being displaced from their communities. And more housing options and strategies are needed to help people have the option to stay in their neighborhoods. One of the discussions we had related to this was finding a job that you can work at in your neighborhood. Basically, it's like the old, where I grew up, in the communities where the factories were in the residential areas, and looking at how we can accomplish ways where people can have an easier commute going to work and have accessible housing in those areas that they need. And then lastly, the last one is subsidy, creating and sustain long-term funding sources that create and preserve housing for very low-income households and unhoused residents. And the statement that was made here was that at the lowest income levels, the market is incapable of building housing at a cost that is affordable. So working at trying to eliminate that issue, which will help eliminate the cost burden for households. And it requires a major increase in funding to subsidize housing costs and to build more housing affordable to households earning less than $50,000 per year. And sorry for the background noise, but you may have heard. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Baggett.
Thank you, Your Honor. As most of you know, the city of Auburn is comprised of two counties, King and Pierce. And I have the privilege of sitting on the Pierce County Cities and Towns Association meetings that they hold every month. And on June 3rd, we had a program speaker, Mike Lonergan, who is the Pierce County Assessor and Treasurer. And for those of you who are living in the Pierce County area, on the 25th of June of this year, Mike and his staff will be mailing out or addressing all of the changes in the values for their taxation for the coming year. And last year, I think it went up about 9%. This year, it's going to range anywhere from 9.9% up to a 18.7% increase in some areas. The larger increase will be in the area of Wilkerson within the Pierce County area. Most of the increase or the percentages I said that apply to the taxation will go to the state. That's about, I believe, if my numbers are correct here and I can read them, I think it's about 35%. 24% will go to the schools, 10% to fire district, about 11 or 12% going to the county, and 10% to the fire district. Overall, this is a kind of a major increase to most residential areas and businesses for the Pierce County area. So be prepared for that when it arrives in your mailbox or however they communicate with you on the 25th of June. Our association, the Pierce County Cities and Towns Association, is trying to fill a vacancy for both the president and the secretary treasurer of that association. Since the passing of Mayor Ron Lucas, the position of president has yet to be filled, which should be probably on the agenda for next month. Secretary treasurer is currently Paul Lovelace, and he is looking to go on to other things, and that is another open position, which will probably also be discussed during the July meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Stearns.
Thank you, Your Honor. Just a few quick things. On May 19th, I attended the renowned Good Eggs Breakfast with Emerald Downs Phil Ziegler. And it was really good to hear that horse racing is back here in Auburn. And it's live every Wednesday and Thursday and Sunday, weekdays in the evening and Sundays in the afternoon. And that's a great thing to have back in our city. On May 21st, I was fortunate enough to go up the hill to visit the Muckleshoot tribe. There, the Red Road to DC totem pole was making a stop. It's been carved by the Lummi Nation, and excuse me, carved by the Lummi Nation's House of Tears carvers. And the pole is to call attention to the protection of Native American sacred sites, and it will be eventually received in Washington, D.C. at the Smithsonian Museum of the American Indian. And then lastly, on Friday, this past Friday, I attended the Sound Cities Association's seminar on Bellevue's new, well, not so new now, but their Hate Has No Home Here campaign. And the campaign is just been incredibly successful, but it's about taking action to fight hate, bias, and racism, especially after there were a number of those incidents directed against Asian and Pacific Islanders in Bellevue. There are signs that residents and businesses in Bellevue have been posting actively, and then the city itself has released some statements and made proclamations, as well as the chief of police in Bellevue. And there's a administrator for the program, Yuriana Garcia Telez, and I had mentioned to her that we have a new administrator here for the Inclusive Auburn Initiative, and they were glad to hear that and both be in contact with us. Thank you. That's my report.
Thank you. Councilmember Jay Raj.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't have anything to report this week.
Thank you. Councilmember Malinga.
Hi, Your Honor. I have nothing to report. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I will share with you just a few of the items on Wednesday, May 19th, along with my fellow mayors, Dana Ralph of Kent and Leanne Geyer of Pacific. We were invited to speak to the alumni for the Leadership Institute of South Puget Sound, which is organized and overseen by the Auburn Area Chamber of Commerce. And the theme of the event was COVID and what leadership lessons have you learned during COVID? And one of the things that was a theme throughout all of the answers by each of us was how proud we were by the resiliency of our teams and their ability during such challenging times to be able to continue to serve the people of the cities that they represent. And so it's nice to hear that it's not just Auburn that is handling things that way, but I will tell you that I am incredibly proud of how our teams have been able to continue to serve the people of Auburn during this last year and 3 months, 2 or 3 months so far, and continuing on. On Monday, the 24th of May, Sound Cities Association is doing Meet the King County Council members. And this past time was our own King County Council member, Pete von Reichbauer, and many of the other local elected leaders on the call, with no offense to any of the other King County Council members who have been at these presentations previously. They said it was probably the most interesting one that they had attended. So we should be very proud of our council member. He talked a bit about relationship building, bridge building, and that was one of the themes throughout his talk and his experiences is how do you bring people together, whether they have things in common that they are aware of or not. Typically, people are going to find something that they have in common with. He was asked about his role in keeping the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle, and it is a real thing. It is not just lore. Councilmember von Reichbauer did play an integral part in keeping the Seattle Seahawks here in Seattle instead of moving to California. So we owe him that as well. On Monday, June 1st, my daughter Lucky was here with me, and we were honored to once again raise the pride flag in the city of Auburn. And this year we did have a small ceremony. I want to thank council members Trout Manuel, Stearns, and Jay Raj for attending. I also want to thank Revive lead pastor Josh Headley for providing prayer, and also Chris Stott for providing his experiences being part of the LGBTQ plus community. On Thursday, June 3rd, Council, I am so thrilled to tell you that Community Court is now operational. We have had one member or one person become a participant in community court with many, many more to follow. So I expect to be able to provide you with very positive updates as we move forward and help those in our community to find their way back. On Friday, June 4th, I attended Empty Bowls at Grace Community Church. Still not exactly the same event as it used to be because we are not gathering inside yet, but out in the parking lot was the Auburn Food Bank Executive Director Debbie Christian, along with many of her volunteers, selling bowls that have been created by local people who do ceramics and raising money to assist with those in need of food. And then immediately after that, headed back for the Realtors Housing Issues Briefing that they do annually. And this year, the theme, no surprise to anyone, the very limited housing options and skyrocketing housing prices that are squeezing the middle class out of affordable housing and into long commutes. They talked about solutions that are being crafted or evaluated to plan for and accommodate housing affordable to all economic segments of our population, with keynote speaker Matthew Gardner, and also comments by state representatives Joe Fitzgibbon and Nicole Macri addressing housing issues and solutions. And then council, yesterday was the opening of the 2021 season for the Auburn International Farmers Market. I want to say thank you to Deputy Mayor DeCoursey and Councilmember Baggett for attending because the opening ceremonies, again, a little different than what we have done in the past because of gatherings. But yesterday we were able to dedicate a bench in the area where the market usually exists to former Deputy Mayor Bill Pelosa. His wife Joyce was there to accept the dedication. We spoke of Bill's stick-to-itiveness, if you will, and his belief in the farmers market and the fact that he was able to bring it to a reality in our community. And once again, King County Council Member Pete Von Reichbauer was there to say a few words to thank Bill and his memory for his service to the veterans in our community, as well as his service on the Regional Policy Committee, where many of the issues are determined prior to moving to the King County Council for their final vote. And with that, we have no need for an executive or closed session tonight, Council. We stand adjourned. Thank you.